Hi there, everybody. Welcome to our open book. Hi there, Diana Lynch. Hi there, Laurie Tierney, John O'Hara, Mark Kemble, Linda Grimm. Good to be with you on this holiday. Diane Wood, A.C. Mulgar, Jeremy Sicking, Carla, Andrea Elizabeth Mitchell, S.R., Rhonda Scott Marks, and Maggie. Reverend Flowers, very good to see you. Jeffrey Hobman, very good to have you with us. Yes, it is freezing in Chicago, but the afterglow of such a magnificent performance. However sad the ending. Sorry, I'll be all right.
A wonderful game, though.
A wonderful game. And that's what it's all about, right? Exactly. I passed on X Ashton Kutcher, who's a big Bears fan. Did you see this?
I didn't, but it's good he has redeeming qualities.
He talked about this is what football is all about. The greatest experience of his football career. He said it's about family, it's about heritage, it's about rooting. Yeah, absolutely.
Good job, Ashton.
Yeah, and didn't mention Mila Kunis, but
Well, then
I think they were
deduct
both at the
7
game.
points.
Yeah, all right. Look, good holiday to you. Yes, pitchers and catchers reporting. That's true. That's true. Thank you, Mr. Dickens. Reporting soon. April 1963, Dr. King was in the Birmingham City Jail. He'd been imprisoned for participating in a nonviolent demonstration against segregation. He read in the Birmingham newspaper a letter from some clergymen in town who said, yes, segregation was terrible, but it should be pursued through the courts, not just not public demonstrations. 8 white religious leaders, and this was his response. He began to write it in the edges of newspapers that he got in prison, and finally his lawyers were able to get him some paper. So I unfortunately can't read the whole thing, but this will stay with you. This is American history, world history. Dr. King says, while confined here in the Birmingham City Jail, I came across your recent statement calling our present activities unwise and untimely. I would like to answer your statement in what I hope will be patient and reasonable terms. I think I should give you the reason for my being in Birmingham, since you have been influenced by the argument of outsiders coming in. I have the honor of serving as president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, an organization operating in every southern state with headquarters in Atlanta, Georgia. We have some 85 affiliate organizations all across the South, one being the Alabama Christian Movement for Human Rights. Whenever necessary and possible, we share staff, educational, and financial resources with our affiliates. Several months ago, our local affiliate here in Birmingham invited us to be on call to engage in a nonviolent direct action program if such were deemed necessary. We readily consented, and when the hour came, we lived up to our promises. Beyond this, writes Dr. King, I am in Birmingham because injustice is here. Just as the 8th century prophets left their little villages and carried their "Thus saith the Lord" far beyond the boundaries of their hometowns. And just as the Apostle Paul left his little village of Tarsus and carried the gospel of Jesus Christ to practically every hamlet and city of the Greco-Roman world, I, too, am compelled to carry the gospel of freedom beyond my particular hometown. Like Paul, I must constantly respond to the Macedonian call for aid. Moreover, I'm cognizant of the interrelatedness of all communities and states. I cannot sit idly by in Atlanta. I must honestly reiterate that I have been disappointed with the church. I do not say that as one of those negative critics who can always find something wrong with the church. I say that as a minister of the gospel who loves the church, who was nurtured in its bosom, who has been sustained by its spiritual blessings, and who will remain true to it as long as the cord of life shall lengthen. I had the strange feeling when I was suddenly catapulted into the leadership of the bus protest in Montgomery several years ago that we would have the support of the white church. I felt that the white ministers, priests, and rabbis of the South would be some of our strongest allies. Instead, some few have been outright opponents, refusing to understand the freedom movement and misrepresenting its leaders. All too many others have been more cautious than courageous and have remained silent behind the anesthetizing security of stained glass windows. It's an extraordinary phrase, isn't it? In spite of my shattered dreams of the past, I came to Birmingham with the hope that the white religious leadership of this community would see the justice of our cause and with deep moral concern serve as the channel through which our just grievances could get to the power structure. Again, I have been disappointed. I have heard numerous religious leaders of the South call upon their worshipers to comply with the desegregation decision because it is the law. But I have longed to hear white ministers say follow this decree because integration is morally right. The Negro is your brother. In the midst of blatant injustices inflicted upon the Negro, I have watched white churches stand on the sidelines and merely mouth pious irrelevancies and sanctimonious trivialities. In the midst of a mighty struggle to rid our nation of racial and economic injustice, I have heard so many ministers say, those are the social issues which the gospel has nothing to do with. And I have watched so many churches commit themselves to a completely otherworldly religion, which made a strange distinction between bodies and souls, the sacred and the secular. Dr. King writes, and by the way, I am aware of the terrific contrast between my weak voice and his strong, sonorous one. I read on. There was a time when the church was very powerful. It was during that period that the early Christians rejoiced when they were deemed worthy to suffer for what they believed. In those days, the church was not merely a thermometer that recorded the ideas and principles of popular opinion. It was the thermostat that transformed the mores of society. Wherever the early Christians entered a town, the power structure got disturbed and immediately sought to convict them for being disturbers of the peace and outside agitators. But they went on with the conviction that they were a colony of heaven and had to obey God rather than man. They were small in number but big in commitment. They were too God-intoxicated to be astronomically intimidated. This brought an end to such ancient evils as infanticide and gladiatorial contest. Things are different now, writes Dr. King. The contemporary church is so often a weak, ineffectual voice with an uncertain sound. It is so often the arch supporter of the status quo. Far from being disturbed by the presence of the church, the power structure of the average community is consoled by the church's often vocal sanction of things as they are, that the judgment of God is upon the church as never before. But even if the church does not come to the aid of justice, I have no despair about the future. I have no fear about the outcome of our struggle in Birmingham, even if our motives are presently misunderstood. We will reach the goal of freedom in Birmingham and all over the nation because the goal of America is freedom. Abused and scorned though we may be, our destiny is tied up with the destiny of America. Before the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth, we were here. Before the pen of Jefferson scratched across the pages of history the majestic word of the Declaration of Independence, we were here. For more than 2 centuries, our foreparents labored here without wages. They made cotton king and they built the homes of their masters in the midst of brutal injustice and shameful humiliation. And yet, out of a bottomless vitality, our people continue to thrive and develop. If the inexpressible cruelties of slavery could not stop us, the opposition we now face will surely fail. We will win our freedom, wrote Dr. King, because the sacred heritage of our nation and the eternal will of God are embodied in our echoing demands. He says, I must close now. But before closing, I am impelled to mention one other point in your statement that troubled me profoundly. You warmly commended the Birmingham police force for keeping order and preventing violence. I don't believe you would have so warmly commended the police force if you had seen its angry, violent dogs, literally biting 6 unarmed, nonviolent Negroes. I don't believe you would so quickly commend the policemen if you had observed their ugly and inhuman treatment of Negroes here and in the city jail. If you had watched them curse and push old Negro women and young Negro girls, if you could see them slap and kick old Negro men and young boys, if you would observe them as they did on 2 occasions, refusing to give us food because we wanted to sing our grace together. I am sorry that I can't join you in your praise for the police department. It is true that they have been rather disciplined in their public handling of the demonstrators. In a sense, they have been publicly nonviolent, but for what purpose? To preserve the evil institution of segregation. Over the last few years, I have constantly preached that nonviolence demands the means we use must be as pure as the ends we seek. So I've tried to make it clear that it is wrong to use immoral means to attain moral ends. But now I must affirm it is just as wrong to use moral means to preserve immoral ends. I wish you had commended the Negro demonstrators of Birmingham for their sublime courage, their willingness to suffer, and the amazing discipline in the midst of the most inhuman provocation. Dr. King writes, one day, the South will recognize its real heroes. They will be the James Merediths, courageously and with a majestic sense of purpose facing jeering and hostile mobs, and the agonizing loneliness that characterizes the life of the pioneer. There will be old, oppressed, battered Negro women, symbolized in a 72-year-old woman of Montgomery, Alabama, who rose up with a sense of dignity and with her people decided not to ride the segregated buses. Responded to one who inquired about her tiredness with ungrammatical profundity. My feet is tired, but my soul is rested. They will be young high school and college students, young ministers of the gospel, and a host of their elders courageously and nonviolently, sitting in at lunch counters and willing to go to jail for conscience's sake. One day, the South will know that when these disinherited children of God sat down at lunch counters, they were in reality standing up for the best in the American dream and the most sacred values in our Judeo-Christian heritage. Dr. King concludes by saying, never before have I written a letter this long, or should I say a book. I'm afraid that it is much too long to take your precious time. I can assure you that it would have been much shorter if I had been writing from a comfortable desk. But what else is there to do when you are alone for days in the dull monotony of a narrow jail cell, other than write long letters, think strange thoughts, and pray long prayers? If I have said anything in this letter that is an understatement of the truth and is indicative of an unreasonable impatience, I beg you to forgive me. If I have said anything in this letter that is an overstatement of the truth, I beg God to forgive me. Wow. April 1963, Martin Luther King's letter from a Birmingham jail. On this blessed MLK Day. First published as a book by the American Friends Service Committee, as a matter of fact. And been a number of publications since then. Yeah, an epistle.
And
So-
then a number of open books since.
Yes.
We've read it at
Yeah.
least 2 years in a row.
Yeah. So
A little tradition.
yes. Tradition. Sorry, forget. All right, I couldn't say that all the time. So thanks for being with us on our open book. See you tomorrow. Take care. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye. Did somebody say Scott GPT? SR said that.
I choose to ignore.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right.